Okay, so I'll just give a short introduction. I'll
Hmm.
introduce you to our audience. So
Okay.
today we have with us Kimya Gandhi, who is a type designer. She's also a partner at Mota Italic Type Foundry. And Mota Italic has catered to a lot of clients. They design custom and retail typefaces, and their clients include Škoda, Audi, Apple, Google, and yeah. So just a second. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
No
Okay,
problem.
so I'll just turn off the comments right now. Otherwise, it's hiding your face. Yeah,
Okay.
okay, that's better.
All right.
So, Kimya, you did your BDES from NIFT Bombay,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So, when did you get interested in design?
In design, well, actually, I
Yeah,
went
in
to NIFT.
general.
Yeah. Well, uh, well, I was always interested in school. I was always interested in drawing, paint, like, art as such. Like, not, I didn't, early on, I didn't know too much of the design world as such. But I mean, I think there was always JJ as an option. I had heard a few friends or seniors who from school who had gone to JJ, so I knew like applied art, advertising, that sort of field. But I was always my inclination was always in art and drawing, even in school. So I think there was always that interest in me. But then, yeah, it's quite a funny story that my parents kind of thought I should become a doctor, like every child from the 80s, I think. So I did give my medical entrance as well because I was like, okay, let me try it. But incidentally, thankfully, I didn't have to go through that. I think in the process of doing that, I realized that this is not what I want to do. And so I gave my NIFT entrance, and I was initially interested in fashion design. So that is why I chose NIFT. Um, but I got through NIFT Mumbai in the communication course, and they said that the foundation is the same, so you can get in, and then next year, if you want to change fields, you can do that. But once I was in foundation, I saw what was in store for the communication course, and then I just stayed on. So I think it was not entirely planned. Some of it was just pure coincidence, and I just dove in and saw like where it'll go. So.
And so your interest in type design, did that also start in it?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, we had a couple of typography courses, which I was always also interested in lettering a little bit, and calligraphy. I did a little bit of, part-time like courses or some kind of classes for a little while, and I was always into lettering. So when it was taught as a module, which was a very short module, but I had so much fun doing it that I decided to pursue the field a little bit more. And the more I kept reading, I was like, wow, there's this whole field of people who sit and draw letters. That's fantastic. So my graduation project, even in IFT, was a type project. Actually, I interned with Sarang Kulkarni. He the founder of Ek Type. So that time he was White Crow. So yeah, I interned with him a little in well, my graduation project was under his mentorship. So I did that, and then yeah, and I had so much fun doing it that I was like, okay, I need to learn more, and I think that just kept going on. With every project I got, I was more and more interested in the field, and that continues even now, I think.
So going into your graduation project, like did you think beforehand that you wanted to do a graduation project in type design or did it just happen?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think by the end of the third year, beginning of fourth year, I was already getting. I knew that I was trying to see what all I don't want to do. For example, I think NIF had like courses. The communication design course had PR and I don't know everything that you could think of. They had a module for it. So I think, but that for some was just like, why are we doing this? But I think I found that interesting because I definitely knew what I don't want to do. So I was like, I do not want to do 3D, but or like I don't want to do PR for sure. So I think, or exhibition design or something like that. So I think it kind of helped in eliminating things that I don't want to do. So yeah, I
So it
mean,
was
I think
helpful, but not in the way they intended.
no, I mean, well, you have to try something before you know that you like it or not.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I guess, I mean, some people did benefit from that because they thought, like, oh yeah, I like doing art direction or set design, and then they've gone ahead and done that. So it was, I guess, useful to people in different ways. But yeah, so I was always thinking of doing a graphic design project or a type project, and eventually, when I met Sarang, I think and it happened that because there was nobody in college who could mentor me with my type project, they were like, okay, but we don't have anybody who can help you with this project now. So I said, okay, I'll go out and I'll find a mentor. So that's how it kind of worked out. So yeah, I don't think it was like entirely planned, but it like one thing led into the other, and like it, yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. So directly after your graduation project, did you join IDC?
Yes. Because I think when I was working on this type project, with you can't do, you can do only so much in 3 months, and that's what happened with my project. Like it was a Latin typeface, and I did only lowercase, and so I wanted to learn more about like the software. There's also the production part of it and everything. There's so many aspects. Like once you go into it, it seems like such a niche field, but there's so much to learn in it as well. So once I got to the like, a little bit into it, then I was like, oh, but there's so much more to still study. So actually, I was looking at typeface ME courses, and I did look up Reading at that point, but Reading was so expensive to go to at 12 years back, and
Yeah.
especially when there was no companies as well. So I was like, okay, I might go and do my master's, and then who like there was no company that I could come back in India and even work for. So I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I was a little unsure about that. And so then I thought, okay, then IDC had a bunch of project like students who had done type projects. So I said, okay. So that's why I immediately after went and did IDC.
So, after IDC, again, you managed to get an internship at Linotype.
Mm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, how did you apply to that? How did
So
you get that?
actually, the thing was my internship was also at CDAC in Pune. That's also they do Indian language computing and typeface design. So I think with every project, I was getting more and more sure that this is what I want to explore. So then I was trying to find out more and more avenues of how I could go, where I could go work. And so, yeah, I had heard that Satya had come back from his, I think, Dalton Mag and Linotype internship at that point. And I think he was just about had released Fedra or something like that. So I think for me in that uh, age group, I think it was kind of nice to see, kind of just see what people are doing to design typefaces. So I just thought, yeah, I mean, if I can't go and study outside, then maybe I should just apply for an internship. And so I wrote to a few places and somehow Type worked out. So, I mean, I was sending my portfolios and being like, I'm interested in Indian scripts, but I also want to learn Latin. So, yeah. And so I got accepted to their internship program, and that was quite I think that was a more defining, like for sure, moment where when I went in this office, and though there were not many type designers in studio at the Linotype office then, still just getting to do that the whole day and getting feedback and just having access to people around you who knew so much about the field, and just being in those conversations was just so refreshing and nice for me that I was like, okay, I think I can keep doing this longer.
So, a lot of a lot of students in my college, they were also interested in knowing about how you can basically, like, what is the scope of a type designer, maybe in India or abroad. So if you could elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah, that's still a tricky question. I feel like, I think like, for example, when I was graduating from IDC and because I had invested so much time in doing all these type projects, a little fear was in me actually was because of my type projects. If I wanted a job in, I don't know, as a visual designer in some IT company, I'm sure I probably wouldn't have got it. But on the other hand, I think uh, recruitments in certain companies are fairly easy. So it's, I guess, like, because I don't, okay. So then, I just thought, uh, that's why I decided to do the internship. But I had given myself a little bit of time and thinking that, okay, let me try this for a year. And if nothing works out, then I can always go back and do a job. That's the thing about, like, I always tell students, even when I'm teaching, that they're worried, like, oh, what do I do about a job? And I feel like you can, if you design is such a thing that you can't just like forget to design, or so if you give yourself a 1 year or whatever time to explore something different that you're passionate about, and if for some reason it doesn't work out, then you can always go back and I don't know, get a job that is not your first preference, maybe. But I mean, it can be possible. So, but the tricky part with type design, especially in India, coming back to your question, is that as far as scope, I can't define the scope at all because it's so varied. There, I would say there's potential if you, because with Indic scripts especially, there's so much work that can be done still. There are so many, like, you have with Latin type design, that there's so many typefaces already, and a lot of times I hear people saying, oh, how do you design a newer Latin typeface? But you see all these programs and people designing new and exciting typefaces even now. But with Indic, there's still a lot of scope, so you can start working on self-initiated projects and freelance and work with. So there's no longer the need to like get a job as such and work. You can be self-employed and collaborate with different people around the world. And I think one thing that this current COVID lockdown situation has taught people is that you can just work with anybody around the world everywhere, and there's no office space restrictions. So
Yeah, collaboration has become much easier, I think, in these
and more
times.
acceptable also. And because I think if there was some apprehensions before, now because it's forced and it's working, then it just becomes a much known fact that yeah, this works, and you can work with somebody sitting in a completely different country.
So at Linotype, you had to create a Devanagari script for an existing Latin typeface, right?
Yes, I
So what? Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
no, it was the Devanagari counterpart for din next.
Then, yeah. So what are the challenges in doing that as compared to designing a Devanagari typeface from scratch?
Well, I would say, like, I think challenges wise, I mean, I don't see them as challenges. They're just different approaches to the process of designing, I think, because eventually the challenges of designing type remain same. If you talk about like how the aesthetic should work, how the proportions should be, how it should be a well drawn typeface, I think those challenges are quite the same for all scripts really. But I think especially with Din, I think like it was one of their Din Next is one of Rhinotype's like better known and well licensed typeface, so which is why I think they picked that. But because it was also one of my really first full-fledged type projects, so I was also only just learning. So I think the challenges more for me were just because it was this big project and it was my first project. So I think just understanding how to work in font lab and also to make sure that my Devanagari proportions are still okay and well, now when I look at it, I would change a lot about it, which happens with every typeface, I guess, after a few years. But I think, yes, mostly I think the challenging part, but also I think, again, I don't see it as a challenge as such because it's kind of, you're learning something new. And I think just working on that project more than anything was just exciting for me because I was getting to do this. So,
And learn so much, I assume.
yeah, yeah.
So the next thing I would like to ask you is how then did you get involved with Mota Italic?
Well, so when I was here for my internship at Linotype, um, I was visiting Berlin with a couple of friends uh, for this other friend's Thanksgiving party, and that's where I met Rob actually, who was the sole founder of Mota Italic. And then we started because he went to Reading and he also had designed the Devanagari typeface. We started speaking about his type projects, and I started I first got involved in working on Vesper Devanagari, which he had initially started in Reading, but he was like, can you look at it? Maybe you can help me finish the typeface and correct some things. And yeah, so that's how we started working. But then Rob visited India a lot of times, and then eventually we got involved not just with work. So then he moved to India 5 years back when we got married, and then so I think there was no like, how did I get involved with Mota Italic as like a formal thing? It just, I think by default, then I became part of it.
It just happened.
Yeah.
So how was your like I don't know how to ask this. Like how has your experience been at Mota Italic designing all these typefaces?
At Mota Italic, oh, it's been fantastic. I think early on when we were talking about how we want the company to be and what are, as a foundry, because I think that is very important to decide quite early on what are your goals, what are you setting out to do as a company. And I think when we got together and we were discussing all these possibilities, I think we both knew that we didn't want to become like a full-fledged big company as such, because in other cases, experiences, we've seen that once you start doing that, then you don't get to design more and you have to be almost a more managerial person trying to, you know, which we both weren't like that is not something that we enjoy. And so we decided to keep it small. So every year, like in India, we would have, but and would collaborate with people as and when as and when projects require us to. And I find that format much nicer because then you are open to working with more people from different parts of the world, but we still liked having students around and interning for uh, certain amounts of time. So yeah, I think like that because we kind of decided on that format, I think it's nice and enjoyable because then we have a mix of projects and there's never too much stress about uh yeah, like office stress as such. I think I've never even thought of it as this company that I work for. I just like what I do and I get to do it every day. So that's really cool.
Um, so I have a question here. So how is your experience as a woman in the type design industry? Because almost every type conference typically you see male type designers speaking. So how has your experience been?
I think I hear a lot about that's going on with respect to this uh, aspect, but I think with me as like personally, my journey I have, I don't, I would be, I don't think I have faced any kind of discrimination as such or because of being a woman. And that's been my personal experience. And I think like even So after my linotype internship, like I have attended a few conferences and spoken at some as well. So, for me to uh, say what my experience as a woman has been, that I don't even consider myself as a woman type designer. I always, from my perspective, I just think of myself as a type designer, and I think like that's just how my approach has been. And I think, uh, yeah, so, and of course, like I think I see things changing in that aspect as well. And I'm a part of this community online called Alphabets, and I think since I've seen a very positive change since there has been efforts trying to make people aware that you do need to have more equality in terms of what are the speakers. But again, like I think like from my perspective, I always just see myself as what I do and not really as like a woman type designer or a type designer of color or something, because I think I don't know how to explain. This is tricky, right? Because I feel like I'm just a person and I can't really like uh, define myself like that. So I can tell you my experience as like a type designer, and but I think like also because I work with Rob very closely and we are very equals in our field, that I have not been made to feel uh, any or just because any because just because I'm a woman. So, but I think there is, of course, other people who've had very different experiences, and I'm, of course, aware of that. And I think that somehow it just so happened that I have not experienced any. So,
I think that's a great thing, and it's also great that we have role models like you to look up to in typography now.
oh, thank
So
you.
definitely situations getting better, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, I
So
think I keep encouraging anybody who's interested to, a lot of times I see students or graphic designers saying that, oh, we are interested and we want to try and design our first typeface, and I always encourage people to try and do what you feel like doing, because you never know where it takes you. So, yeah. Sorry, you were
um
saying.
no, I was gonna go in a completely different direction,
Oh.
which was so like coming back to Mota Italic. So how do you think of new fonts?
Hmm.
Where do you
That's a
get the
good.
ideas from?
I think it's a lot of mixed. There's no one way or process of how we decide on new designs. Usually for me, I do still I'm still kind of more comfortable with drawing things with hand a lot of times. So, which is basically I won't draw the whole character set or entire design, but maybe just an idea for a typeface that I see. A lot of I think inspiration, especially when I was back in India and would be traveling around, would come from just seeing some hand painted sign, or like just some aspect of it. Or so that's, I think, it stays with you somewhere subconsciously, and I think then I think over the years now I have kind of I have so many ideas for so many typefaces that I want to make. Then I think I just go and pick an idea out of that, and then that, as I think, as per my mood and what I'm feeling like working on, it I think translates itself into a new family. Also, sometimes it is like when I see something that is an identifiable need, or if I see that, oh, there's not too many really bold, high contrast Devanagari typefaces, then that's something, then it arises from something that I feel is missing. Then that also leads to some making a design sometimes. So,
So we had a related question to that, which is, as a designer, how do you navigate the issue of having unique and original work? Since people say nothing is original, how do you deal with that dilemma? So I'm sure, since like you already have so many typefaces in Latin and all, so how would you go about doing that.
But I do agree. I think like nothing can be like entirely original because you're always a product of your influences and so many things that you've been surrounding yourself since childhood, you know. So, like any idea or concept to think that that is like entirely original is a far-fetched thing to probably even think about. I think, especially with design and my like typefaces, for example, I've also heard even in Latin, you know, you have so many humanistic sans serif Latin typefaces, and of course they're different and original to their author because they made them. I think originality to me is like perspective. If I see sit and like copy somebody else's design, it's in the intent. Like if I did that, then it's definitely not original. But if I set out to do something on my own and it happens to look like somebody else's work, then you know, you can't really control that because yes, there might be somebody else who, and especially in the current situation where we are all surrounded by so many similar thoughts and ideas because of social media, and you know, like you're no longer restricted to your own region or something. So it is totally possible that somebody else also thinks of something, some way of, you know, doing things that you did too. So in that case, I don't think that, I think originality, like you, as long as you know you're being true to yourself and your design, I think that's original enough for me.
Oh, those are some wonderful words. I'm sure I'm getting inspired now. So another question I got was when you're looking at multi-script typography. So if you're suppose designing a typeface with both Latin and Devanagari, which one would you design first?
I usually start with Devanagari because I'm most comfortable drawing it because I've done it more, and I have more experience drawing Devanagari typefaces. So I usually start with the Devanagari because also process-wise it gives me a lot more scope to understand the vocabulary of certain strokes because it's inherently more complex shapes. So you know you know how your diagonals would be, and you kind of can define that better, and then to translate that into Latin for me is easier. And most of our retail typefaces that I have drawn have started Devanagari first. Also because I work with Rob a lot of times we collaborate and then he draws the Latin and I draw the Devanagari. So it inherently makes me draw the Devanagari first in any case.
So is designing Devanagari typefaces more difficult than Latin typefaces?
I don't think so. Because I feel, again, you know, I feel like yes, drawing typefaces is difficult, I will say, but it's again, it's a skill. It's an acquired. Uh, anything is probably difficult if you've never done it. So I think for especially for me because I'm used to seeing the shapes a lot more, so I don't feel drawing one is necessarily more difficult than the other. Yes, maybe the production, you know, what happens after drawing the typefaces is the back end of Indian language fonts is more complex. Yes, that is definitely not something that is uh, comparable to Latin, I would say. In that aspect, yes, it
So
is more difficult.
could you explain what you mean by that, by the back end of Devanagari?
So basically, what happens is you draw your letter forms, and that's the visual of it. But then for Devanagari or any other Indian script typeface to work, what you need is some kind of programming and font engineering, as we call it. So that, for example, if you have a half form and a full form and you're typing and you say ka halanta year, then it's supposed to give you a kya, then you write kya, whatever. So when I type this ka halanta year, there has to be some coding that basically tells the information in the font that says when I type ka plus halan, then that should give me the half form. Or if I'm typing a ksh, then I type a ka halan to sh, then that gives you a ksh. So that's a substitution feature, and that needs to be coded in. That information has to be a
Okay.
part of the font. So there is different ways of doing it. There are ways where people manually can write all of this code in certain software, and then that gets packaged along with the design, and that's how you have a functioning working font. But in glyphs, for example, what I use, I don't have to necessarily manually write all of the code. It is kind of hard coded in the software, and you need to build it, you need to update, and which is way easier. But yes, but you need to do that as well, and you need to know what to expect with a script so that you know if something is working or not. So testing out your font, which is where you can find out if certain combinations are working or not, like your iki matra, and then there's a ref. So all these kind of combinations, or even with our the u and e, where they fit and how those are rendered. That's a part of the engineering aspect of it, and that is
It's
also
like maybe different lengths of the
yes,
matras and all
yes,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. It is definitely a lot of work.
So, another question we had received, well, not a question per se, but so in the audience right now, like I'm sure it's mostly just students and people who are not very well versed with font licensing. So, if you could just explain, like, what is font licensing? When do you use it?
So anytime you want to use a font that you see online from a foundry and you want to use it in any particular kind of project, you need to license the font. What that means is you are procuring rights to use this design in your work. So it's a little bit like sort of comparable to stock photography or something, where somebody takes a picture but you're using it for something and you pay that person a license fee so that you can use that. So that doesn't, by licensing, there's it seems difficult, but it's really not difficult, because there's just, you have to understand what is your project. So if, for example, you want to make a book or something, and so you need to know that how many people are going to be using this design. Is it for a personal use, or is it going to be a commercial project? And depending on that, if you go to any type foundry website, of course, each foundry does it differently, but that doesn't make it overtly complex. You just need to understand and read. Usually, they also explain their end user agreement, it's called license agreement, which every foundry will tell you what you can do with what kind of license. So I think I would urge any students to just, as an exercise after this session is done, just open any three foundries and just go and click on, like, before you buy, just to see what are the options available. So there's some people who have some foundries who do a web license that's different. So which, you would use for a website, or for an EPUB, like an e-publication license could be different. So it just depends on what use you uh, want for where do you want to use the font, and then that decides the kind of license. That's it, really.
Okay. And so I noticed that on Mota Italic, you've started this new thing called beta fonts.
Mhm.
So what are beta fonts?
So right now, because also again, this happened with me and Rob being solely working on all of our typefaces, and because again, Devanagari typefaces sometimes take quite long. If I have to finish one family with multiple weights and widths, suppose, then it would take a lot of time, and then to wait a whole year before releasing something. So we thought, why not introduce these in progress fonts? So what beta fonts right now is that it's in progress font. So you can license something. So if you see, my latest design is called Lini. It's this super condensed Devanagari typeface. So I just released the light only, and it's getting continually updated. So you can license it at a lower price right now. And so you're basically investing in the design, sort of. So you'll get it at a cheaper price right now, but as the design gets updated, you keep getting newer files. and you don't have to pay more. And as newer styles get added, then the price keeps going up. So right now I have a version 2 on there. So if
Yeah, I
you
just want to show what Lini looks
yes,
like. It's absolutely beautiful. I love it.
thank you. So
Sorry, go
there's
ahead.
there's a lot of conjuncts and things like that I'm keeping on adding. The next update is going to be more weights. But again, like, if you think about if I had to wait till the whole design was done and then to release it, this just gives me also it's nice because then I can get some kind of feedback from designers who are using it as well to know if a particular design is more used or not, or something like that. So I'll probably have a new design coming up next month as well. So that just gives me also the scope to work on multiple things at the same time and not just one family. So yeah, I think it's
Okay.
also, especially for students, I think it's nice, or anybody who has the fear of like maybe committing to if you think that it's too expensive or something, then I think it's a good way of also testing out if it works for your project or no. Because then you are not committing to maybe buying an entire family. You can
Mhm.
decide if this works for your project at this stage. So yeah.
So if you buy a beta font,
Hmm.
will you have to pay more for the final one?
No.
No, it's just like once you buy it, like you have it.
Yes.
You
Then
have the
once you
license.
buy it, then suppose like right now the Lini is at 15, no, $20. But then eventually, suppose if the family is 200, you end up getting the whole family for 15 because you bought it way earlier.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a
Yeah.
great idea, actually. And yeah, like you said, you keep getting supported throughout the process.
Yeah, and also
That's
there's sometimes it's nice to have feedback because you have something that's being used at an early stage, and sometimes, especially with Devanagari, again, I mean, I don't expect Lini to be used for publications or such, but a lot of times, for example, when I released Maku, I got a lot of Marathi speaking, they were using a very specific input method in like Windows something, this version. So, and some one conjunct wasn't rendering right or some like very specific niche problem. But like these, and then once the whole family is released, then to change all the files and things becomes a little tricky also from our end. So this way,
yeah,
I think the more it gets used, I can also get feedback because as much as testing that we can do, there's just so many, somebody using something on like a Windows 7 or something. I
very
don't have the
obscure
access
thing.
to like test everything. So it's nice to get that kind of feedback as well, technically. Yeah.
Hmm. So you spoke about Maku. So that is more of a handwritten
Hmm.
Devanagari typeface,
Yeah.
right? And you've worked on quite a few of those in the
Yeah.
past. I think starting with Sharad 76.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
I think that
So
was, sorry. No, you
yeah.
go ahead. Finish. No, no, you finish
No,
your
no.
question.
This is like, how did you get started with that? How was the experience working on
So I think Sharad was a very, like, Sharad 76 will always be, I think, a very special project because I think it was such a nice brief. And so I think for people who don't know about it, I guess I won't repeat the whole story, but it was basically designed for Mr. Sharad Deshpande, his handwriting, and he suffered paralysis, so he could not write with his, he was a copywriter and he had a lot of his books, and so his sons decided to make a font out of his handwriting and gift it to him on his 75th, 76th birthday. So it was such a beautiful gesture and it was such a
it?
nice, heartfelt
Heartwarming.
project. So I was very excited to work on it, and also because the we I wanted to always work on a handwritten Devanagari typeface with alternates because it wasn't commercially available still, any kind of handwritten font with alternates. As many, actually. There have been some which have a couple alternates, but not for every character. So that process itself was also very exciting for me to figure out the coding for that, because as you type, things change. And this is also very common in Latin. It's not some groundbreaking thing that I did, but just to apply that to Devanagari was also quite exciting personally for me. So yeah, while I was working on that typeface, I was getting all these ideas of, with handwritten typefaces, you could do so much. You could have like these swash characters and things, which obviously I could not do with Sharad 76 because it was, his handwriting. So, which is when I already started drawing some of mine. So that is where Maku started, because that is kind of a stylized version of my own handwriting. So
Okay.
I was drawing things and I was making all these different options for characters, and then that's how I got into that. And then I guess like it just so happens that because I have two handwritten fonts, then I think by word of mouth, I think it just so happened that I got more projects to do handwritten typefaces, because I guess they were like, she does these now, which is so, which is after which I got to work on the latest one, which is the handwriting of Pula Deshpande. And that was again like a super uh, satisfying and really great project to be a part of. I was really happy because I've grown up reading his books, and to be able to be a part of that project was really fun. And I think I enjoyed working on those projects because there's also this human touch to it, and it means something more than just uh, some other designs. There is especially with the Pula Deshpande project, I think I went back and saw more videos, or like, went back and read some of his literature. And I think it's not just, you realize that it's not just a visual medium. It opens up into so many more aspects. So yeah, so that's why I've done quite a few, and I think I enjoy working on them from time to time.
So, um, another thing you had worked on was Chiki, which was, I think, the first variable Devanagari typeface,
Yeah.
um, as far as I know.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
I think, yeah, we also tried to find if there were any others, but there weren't. So, yes.
so how is it trying to make a variable Devanagari typeface? Are there any like extra challenges in that?
No, actually, again, like I think it's just like variable font is only like it's a font format. So I think for as long as the software that you're working in allows you to export a file, it basically is a compatible multiple master file format. So it's not anything technically too different to make a variable font than if you made a compatible multiple master file. It, of course, like variable files allow you to do with Chiki, it's only one axis, for example. Uh, it's only the weight axis, but there's a lot of other possibilities that you can do with variable fonts, which I'm in the process of also trying to explore. But I think technically, again, like I said, it's not nothing extra challenging that you have to do for it.
Okay. And one more thing is, uh, yeah, I got a question that, if you don't know much about type design right now, how can you get started with learning more about type design and typography?
Well, I think there is now more than ever so many online resources to at least get uh, to knowing the beginning, like, just introductory stages of. So there's two parts to it. I would say there's learning a software to make your typefaces, and the other part is the visual, the aesthetic of drawing letters. And you need to eventually learn both if you want to make a good working functioning typeface. And the software part of it is pretty easy because you have so many online tutorials and things for glyphs and RoboFont and Font Lab that if you depending on what you choose and um, what system you have, you start learning that part. So that becomes just you learning the software. But the visual part of it is the one that's the more difficult, I think, and more time. You have to give more time to be able to do, to be able to draw good. And that's like you have certain resources online and otherwise on physical where you can. Sorry, I thought it like, did my connection break or something? No, right?
No, no, no. It's yeah. It's
No.
all good.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of lettering exercises and then eventually learning how to expand your sketches into, again, going into the software. So I think, in fact, on our Mota Italic page, especially for Devanagari type design, there's a page for Devanagari type design resources, and where we've mentioned a lot of links of this is again especially pertaining to Devanagari, but there's links how you we even wrote a blog about how you can start your first Devanagari typeface in glyphs. So that's on the glyphs website as well, and certain books and things that you can refer to. So I think there's no one way of how you can start, but I always encourage people to start drawing your design, and then you can always also, if you're not enrolled in a course and if you're doing it independently, it is still possible to reach out to people and other type designers. And I always say like the type design community is quite approachable and welcoming. So if you write to somebody and of course they have you request that they look at your work, I'm sure like you'll get somebody to give you feedback, because that is also important to have somebody look at your design and tell you. There's also mentorship. There's also, I would like to talk about the Alphabet's mentorship program, which is a great program initiated by the Alphabet's blog, where you basically have to, they pair you with a mentor from, could be anywhere around the world, and it's a 3-month program where you can work with them on a design. And especially for people who want to start off, I think that sort of a thing is really good. And there's a couple of those also where sometimes some designers offer that they are offering their feedback to young designers, so that happens too. So keep a lookout on uh, how you can get forward with working on your design.
And so, where can you get inspiration from? Like you said, you used to get inspiration from, hand painted type and all. So,
Oh, that's a really broad question. Where can you get inspiration from? Like anywhere. I think, yeah, I feel like type is such a visual and such an all like present thing that anywhere you go, you see letters. So, like I think, especially in India, I feel it is such a, I think the visual landscape is so rich that yeah, that you can get inspired by anything. I think like, I don't know, sometimes people get inspired from nature and still make typefaces from them, or birds. Or I just recently saw a presentation where this type designer was inspired by bird drawings. So I think like that's a totally broad-ended question, I feel. I think that's again your perception where you decide to be inspired from.
yeah, you never know what will get you inspired,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Um, and we have another question here for you, which is, what is life in Berlin like?
Well, right now it's only been a month, so life right now is just trying to get our house settled and like just move boxes. I think but I think, yeah, it's really nice to be just in a different city. It's quite exciting right now. I think I'll be better equipped to answer that question in a few months. Right now, it's all new and exciting for me. So, yeah,
Yeah, maybe next time you come for a Baatein session, you can answer
sure,
it
yeah,
better.
why not?
And so, how can you get an internship, or how can you be like a full-time artist in Berlin? I don't
Full-time artist in Berlin, I mean, I don't know like the visa or the bureaucratic side of things. I'm not entirely sure how like the visas work, but I think what was the first part of the question?
know.
How
Like,
can you
how
get an
can you get
internship?
an internship, maybe?
Oh,
Yeah,
well, you just
as a type designer.
you make I think it's very important to to understand where you are applying for, who do you want to work with. Like currently there's so many type design foundries that have a certain tone, that have a voice that might resonate with you, and it is very important to know first like where you want to work and why you want to work there. And it may so happen that you might want to work with a particular firm because you do like their tone of design, and that's where you see yourself working, which would mean that your work also reflects some of that ideology. So I think building a strong portfolio, and I think by strong portfolio, again, I don't mean that you need like fantastically drawn typefaces. I think a lot of times, especially this is something that I see when I'm looking at internship applications, is that you can tell that there has to be an intent for a design, a certain level of passion that reflects from your work. And because nobody is like perfect in their first. And I think like a lot of times I see students struggling with doing too much. Like, oh, I want to draw italic, I want to draw bold, I want to draw like something else too. And I think it's not necessarily required as long as I can see that there is some clarity of thought. There is, you know, a so I think all those combined would make your portfolio and your presentation, and you apply and see either they are taking interns or they're not. So I would suggest like to identify first where you want to work and be sure of why you want to work there a little bit at least, and then see if your work would get entertained in a place like that.
Okay. Um, just a second. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, they can go ahead and ask it. At the bottom, there's a question mark button, and you can press on it and ask your question. So till then, again, I just want to ask you, so what are you working on currently? Like, what can we expect in the future from Kimya Gandhi?
Well, right now I'm working on the weights of linen, which will hopefully soon I will really I should say this live, so then that puts me under pressure to release it actually. No, so linen weights are coming up next, and I'm also working on another uh, typeface family, which is going to be more a text font with like a more heavier traditional uh, heavy caption weight. So it's a bigger family. But again, because of our beta fonts, I will be able to slowly release that and be able to finish this ambitious family that I have in my mind. So mostly that, yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I think we'll just wrap up now unless we get any other questions. So, like any final words of advice you might have to, type designers or aspiring type designers in India?
Well, I think most importantly, just draw letters. I think I see a lot of people who get so caught up with where do I start, what do I do, and then eventually you just don't. What you're supposed to do is draw letters. That gets like lost in all of the other efforts. So I think just I also like practicing. I think this is such a skill-based field that the more you will draw, the more you keep learning. Even now, every typeface I draw, I learn something new from it, and that's just how it will be. It's just over the years you just get better and better. So my main advice is just to work as hard as you can to draw letters. Just do that first and then think about everything else around it.
Okay. We got one question right now. Okay, one question we got was any advice for students on how to get started with typography? Now, Kimya has already answered that. So this video will go up again on our Instagram and on YouTube, so you can check it out later. The second question we have is there any company in India who hires only type designers?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's now
Yeah.
there's so there's quite a few now. There's Ek Type who works primarily in Indic type design. There's Universal Thirst. They are in Bangalore. There's ITF. There's also, in fact, I just recently read that brand new type, which is from Nilakash. They are in fact looking for hiring a type designer. So yes, there are way more places that you can be hired as a full-time type designer now.
Yeah,
Again, I
I
think there's a
think
list on our website. You can maybe I can post it somewhere that people can look up the type design resources page that has a list of foundries in India that you can work at.
okay. And yeah, the same person asks another question, which is what is the use of type design? Why is it important?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you'll have
Seems a
to,
bit random.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, uh, because type is everywhere. You see, everywhere you read anything that has letters is has been designed by somebody and it serves a specific purpose. So I think as long as you think getting information through the written word is important, type is important too.
Yeah, on you, right? And type design is going to, like, that's how you design what sort of effect it
Sorry,
has on a
your
person.
voice had cut off. I didn't hear the first.
Oh no, I was just saying that any like typography has an effect on a person, and type
Hmm.
designers can sort of control, what kind of effect it is giving, how
Hmm.
you feel from it. Yeah. Okay. Do we have any other questions for Kimya?
If you think of any other
Okay.
questions, you can DM me with them later, I guess.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. So, thank you so much, Kimya, for being here. It was
Thank
a
you.
really, really illuminating session, and we hope to have you back here with us in the future.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for
Um,
having me over at your.
yeah, I'd also like to thank Mitra for making the poster for this Bate session.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you, Mitra. Thank you to the entire Bate team, and
Yes,
hope
thank you. I
so.
guess like this is, I must say that I'm quite inspired that all of you have started doing this, and it's such a nice thing to do for other fellow students. So great job on doing that, and congratulations to you also.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, one last thing. What's your favorite typeface?
Oh no, I don't have this. That's such a I don't know. I don't have a favorite typeface. There's a lot of typefaces that I like, depending again, it's like I don't know, it's like ice cream flavors or something. It changes with
You just
time
can't
and
choose
mood.
one.
No, you can't choose one.
Okay. Thank you so much
All right.
for being here.
Thank you.
See you.
All right.
Bye bye.